Buy, sell or rent your property with Century 21 and you could win a brand new 2-bedroom apartment on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. Visit c21prize.co.nz for your chance to win.
Welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Kylie Davis from CoreLogic, and we've just been joined by Charles Tarbey, CEO of Century 21 Australasia. Now, Kylie, we were talking about all the information that you guys produced before. Tell us about big data and how it relates to property.
So big data is the way that you've got property information about every single property in the country, and then over the top of that you start to overlay insights into the people who live in those properties, and then from that you can overlay what they're going to do, understand what they're going to do next, what they've been doing, and from there you can start to get some predictive analysis on what are they going to do next.
And so what kind of stuff are you trying to extract from this information?
So what we're trying to do is help real estate agents understand who is more likely to list and why they're more likely to list. So understanding the behaviour that things like have they recently had a baby? Are they looking to be moving up a bit into a larger property? Have they recently been divorced? And we can see that through behaviour like shopping patterns or spending habits, and you know, there's a whole pile of insights that you can see that start to identify, flush out what people are doing.
They're getting pretty clever these days, aren't they, Charles?
Well, they've been doing that with housing loans for a while, CoreLogic. You've been predicting that, and you're on selling the data that you have to various banks or institutions. So it's great to see it extending to the real estate industry. We've had to do it, obviously, in our own way. When you go out to somebody's property for a market opinion, you check if it's a husband and wife living there, but they're using 2 bedrooms. You've got an idea of the motivation. It's a really strange way, but you drive up and down the street, and you can generally see 9 times out of 10 which properties are tenanted because they're not as well maintained as those that are owned by people. So you're able to predict it in the same manner, but obviously this is now using technology to do it, but certainly something that we in the industry would have done plenty of times in terms of trying to understand what people's thoughts are for their future.
But I guess there's so much information now.
What do they know about you?
Oh, exactly.
I can just send you some.
I'm sure you can tell me a few stories.
Have it out.
But I guess for the buyers, then there's all these apps that they can tell all the information. I guess an agent's got to be cleverer and cleverer these days to stay in advance of it, especially when the buyers have got the information on what properties have sold for recently. And I guess that's the difference between a good agent and a bad agent.
We've been doing that kind of analysis from a different angle. When you look at analytics, when we send out electronic broadcast, and then within seconds we can see how many people have opened that broadcast. We can see how deeply they've gone into that broadcast. We can see how many times they've opened that broadcast. Well, it's pretty clear to the agent, if somebody's opened that broadcast 5 or 6 times, it's time to give them a call, because they're looking at it. So that sort of predicting the next move is been out there for a while, but a lot of people don't use it. A lot of agents haven't used it. But that type of analysis of a property through an electronic broadcast has been there for a while.
And they're also people that you've already got a relationship with as a real estate agent.
System, yeah.
But if what the stuff that we're looking at now is actually the people who aren't inside your database. So that really cold calling, how do you work out who you should, you know, out of 100 people who are not inside your database, who should you pull that first?
The issue, and I think that's fantastic, and I always admire CoreLogic for their forward thinking. But real estate practitioners, again I'm talking about my own industry, don't even call back the people they have in their database, let alone offering them more. And a lot of agents will say to me, oh, we need this, we need that. And so why don't you just use what you've got? And that's the biggest issue we have as an industry.
Because again, what Kylie was saying from the buyer's perception reports is that the agents aren't doing the basic things. It's the trust things, telling the truth.
Yeah, I was listening to you chatting about that, and it's very difficult, a relationship. You are engaged by the seller, as you said, but you have to have a relationship with the buyer, because how do you negotiate a position that's good for both parties? And it's incredibly difficult, and some agents do fall into the trap of working with a buyer too closely, and they will never get that property back for sale again because of that those actions. But at the same time, a real estate practitioner can treat a buyer with respect without giving away too much information. The biggest issue, when I did my research back in the 70s and 80s when I was writing a book, before you were born, that's the first one, before you were born, was that the majority of real estate, the biggest complaints by the Department of Fair Trading was that real estate agents never call people back.
Yes, response time is a really big issue.
So that was a big issue.
Well, very quickly before we run to Charles's numbers, How can agents get digital friendly if they've got no idea?
I think you have to play with it. Look at what you're doing in your own life, not necessarily as a real estate agent, but what are you engaging in? You know, are you on Facebook? Are you, how are you using your email? How are you communicating? And then look at ways that you can interpret that back into your business. And make time in your week to, give yourself an hour or two every week just to try something new and experiment with it. That's probably the best way.
Sounds good. Charles, let's jump to your numbers. What's happening with auction clearance rates?
Lower this week than last week, but still higher than this time last year. So 77.6% was the national clearance rates, and this time last year 63.3%. So they're keeping that distance still. There's still better marketplace in the last few weeks in this current environment than we had this time last year when we were going through the middle of a boom. So you have to try and work that one out. Sydney came in again at the top of the tree at 84.4%, followed by Melbourne, and that came in at 78.6%. Brisbane's steady, 52.6%. It's been in the 50s for a few weeks, which is really, really good for Brisbane. So I'm impressed that their market's getting more and more stable. So the rates are okay.
Now, not long till the end of the year, so these last few listings are coming on.
Yeah, now you and I know we were expecting a great deal more, so too portals like Domain or realestate.com, because that's really where their business is. It's only a plus 2.83%. It is an increase this week over last week, but we haven't had that massive increase that we need. New Zealand's had a better run than us. They've had a plus 7% over this time last week, and they've had 3 weeks of very good growth. But in Australia, it hasn't been the same, so we still need much, much more in stock for it to
And
work.
given the campaigns are about 4 or 5 weeks long, it's really the next couple of weeks that's going to tell.
If we don't see stock coming in now in the next few weeks, it's going to be, again, a really tight marketplace coming into the new year. And so I don't think if we don't get the stock, the market will continue to be in a frenzy mode, if you like.
Yeah,
in certain parts.
And so that's going to then just bring the, I guess, the encouragement and the growth into January next year. So we could be in for yet another positive year, which I know scares you at times.
It does. Interest rates. Keep an eye on the interest rates. So maybe talking down, but I still feel uncomfortable about the change that they can go through just like that.
OK, what's happening with rents?
They're actually not too bad. There's an increase of 0.24% over this time last week, which was exactly the same increase over the week before. So we're plus 1.68% for the year to date in rates. The best performer was Hobart. They had a 1.4% increase in their rents, and Darwin was the worst at negative 0.73%. So, but they're the mining town issues, and they're struggling as well. Same as you'll see with the vacancy rates. Can we talk about those?
Far away, Charles. You lead the show.
Thanks very much. So what a great performance from Sydney. 0.84% vacancy rates, which is the lowest I've seen it since the 4 years you and I have been talking. We only talk on the show, of course. And the Melbourne market at 2.85%, but Perth went over 10% last week. It's back to 9.41. So the average of those three, 4.366, pretty good. But Perth, I'd like to see some recovery, see that back down in the 6s and 7s as soon as possible. It's impacting very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, I know you haven't got a crystal ball and you're not an analyst or anything like that, but what are your thoughts, or within CoreLogic, the thoughts as to 2017 for the property market? Nice, easy question.
Nice, easy question. Well, depending on supply, if the supply remains tight, then we're going to see prices continue to trend upwards. And I think what we're starting to see a little bit in Sydney now, especially, is because there's this anxiety around, can I buy something? Will there be anything that I want to buy? That we're starting to see people buying first and then selling, because they know that when they, but it's that worry about getting the property of their dreams and trying to nail that first.
It's kind of chicken and egg, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit upside down to what you're told you're supposed to do.
Carl Davis from CoreLogic, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next year as well.
Thanks.
Charles Tarbey, it's always a pleasure.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks for joining us at home. We'll be back again next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
The information featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.